Today, Canadian leaders told to hide from the trucker convoy coming to town. And the latest on Ukraine, we've got that and more coming up, and it all starts right now. Hey, welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Friday. I am Sarah Gonzalez, and it's going to be a fun one today, guys. We've got in studio Steve Deace. I don't think a man who needs no introduction, but I will introduce him anyway. Of course, host of the Steve Deace Show. You can find that here on BlazeTV. We're happy that you're here, Steve.
Thank you. And I'm always down for a good introduction, particularly if it's very complimentary. So by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, that's shocking.
So keep going.
Yeah. All right. Also joined by, as you see, Jakub Bujans, who is host of The Bottom Line, also BlazeTV contributor. And we've got another special guest coming up a little later on in the program. But for now, let's go ahead and get started on the news of the day. I know we covered this yesterday, the trucker convoy, the Freedom Trucker Convoy that is taking place right now. They are driving through Canada to Ottawa, which is Canada's capital. I know those of you who are watching and not listening on the audio podcast can see some aerial footage from this particular convoy. And, you know, it's interesting because we also saw the farmers. We were hearing reports the farmers are joining the convoy, which, as you can see, there are a bunch of tractors that are there. And I just have to say, like, if you are on the way to something that you need to be there on time for and you get stuck behind these people, you're never getting there. You can just go ahead and kiss your plans
Snickers.
goodbye.
You're not going anywhere for a while.
You are going nowhere. But it is interesting. Of course, they're protesting these vaccine mandates. Like I said, trying to get to the capital. But apparently, Canadian leaders are very, very worried. This sounds very similar to talk about a certain date recently here in the United States. They say that they're very worried that there may be an insurrection of sorts, and there's advice being given to the MPs. Do not get involved and go somewhere safe. Close and lock all exterior doors. This is, of course, after they have been characterizing these protesters as xenophobic, things of that nature. And I want to get your thoughts on this, gentlemen, which I have a feeling that you have a few, but I also want to play a video of one of these protesters, just for some perspective of the scene on the ground. Watch.
Would you be able to tell me what brings you out here today?
I'm out here because I think we have a right to choose whether we want to be vaxxed or unvaxxed. And they tried to divide us, but they can't divide us no more because we've become united, both the vaxxed and the unvaxxed people.
What do you say to the mainstream media who says that this is an extremist, xenophobic convoy? Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely not. No, we're free. We're free to do and choose what we want to do. And that's what Canada is about. And as far as the mainstream media, they got to stop the lying already because everybody is woken up and know that they are lying and not telling the truth. They're burying themselves. Yeah. And you know, and there's no trust. But we're trust. The grassroots people are trusting each other. They're not looking to the media anymore.
All right. If you have one word for Justin Trudeau, one sentence for Justin Trudeau, what is it?
You're toast, Justin. If you don't turn, you're toast.
All right. We got to get driving. Thank you so much. Can I get your name? Can I get your name?
Loudoun.
Loudoun. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
So, you know, it's a little embarrassing because Canadians are the stereotypical Canadian. You know, you hear about they're too nice. They're nice to a fault. They don't want to insult anyone. They don't want to, you know, make waves. They don't want to cause any problems. But I feel like when it comes to fighting for your freedoms, they're doing a lot more than Americans are doing, sitting around. You've got California, you've got New York, you've got these places that have implemented vaccine mandates that are pretty strict. And yet we have not seen Americans rise up the way that Canadians seem to be doing right now, at least in my opinion, gentlemen.
I think that's true, but I don't know, and believe me, I have done everything from cajole to homily to plea to yell, scream with my own audience for the last 23 months. Don't just stop just sitting there and taking this, right? But we have advantages culturally and politically they don't have. I mean, we have a federalism system that allows, you know, even a smattering of governors like a Ron DeSantis or a Kim Reynolds in my state to never issue stay-at-home orders, to practice militant forms of federalism as interposition against a federal leviathan. We have a system where I mean, our judicial system and nominating system for judges is as secular and pagan as it has ever been. It also is the John Birch Society compared to what the state of the judiciary is in Canada. All right. And so I think sometimes because we live here, it's a little bit like when you only watch your favorite team and you watch them lose, you think they're a lot worse than they are because that's all you ever watch. And you assume the team they're going to play is always good because you don't watch the other team. We're well aware of Americans about the diminished capacity of our own systems and our own culture. And that's all true. But in comparison to the rest of the West, it's still much closer to where things were 30, 40, 50 years ago during the Cold War, when lines were more clearly drawn in the West than where they are right now. I mean, we're Ike's America compared to what Canada is. And so we do have abilities within the system that we don't have to create these sort of grassroots viral moments to be heard. And what I would say to the Canadians that are doing this is, first of all, phenomenal, Godspeed. But you have to monetize this politically. You're creating a massive viral moment where now you know who are the other people that agree with me. I'm not alone. Are you creating lists? Are you coordinating? Are you creating mechanisms and do it on places like Signal and Telegram, not Facebook, because you'll get banned? All right, where you guys can now coordinate with one another and become an activist base to push back through your political process. Are you organizing off of this? It cannot just be a tantrum. It's got to be a kickoff.
Yeah, so well said. 2000, you go back, 2004, 5, 6, I lived in Canada. I lived in Toronto, played football in Canada, right? And I agree with Steve. We have checks and balances in our system in a micro level, and sometimes we forfeit those. They have none. It is a very passive society, so to see them rise up like this is counterculture for Canadians, but it is indicative to how far they've been pushed. Because they have been under that kind of a socialist structure for so long that finally, I think, we've never seen this in Canada. We've never seen this kind of, because there's been attempts to defend the church in Canada, to give the church freedom of speech, and it's a quick uprising for about a week and then it fizzles. I agree with you 100%. I have never, having lived there, seen this kind of a momentum where now they have to absolutely build political capital. The result from this should be new leaders, new voices, mechanisms, down to podcasts, but instruments that can carry the momentum forward. Because they could, if they do this right for Canadians, alter the course of their country, where they have not had any of our freedoms. So this is almost their moment of coming a little closer to what an America could look like, and they haven't had the opportunity. So the silver lining around the vax thing for them is, hey, it's created an opportunity for us to have a moment to take some power back, because they've never had it.
I want to kind of throw into the conversation here, just since we're talking about being anti-vax mandates, and, well, the left and the mainstream media would just call you an anti-vaxxer if you were against the mandates. But Evangeline Lilly, who I'm sure, Steve, I know you love you love your comic book
movies.
Freckles
has never been hotter.
I figured you would think that. Marvel actress Evangeline Lilly, she's been in a ton of stuff, Lost also, but she issued an Instagram post yesterday emphasizing her stand against the vaccine mandates. She said, I believe nobody should ever be forced to inject their body with anything against their will, under threat of violent attack, arrest or detention without trial, loss of employment, homelessness, starvation, loss of education, alienation from loved ones, excommunication from society, under any threat whatsoever. This is not safe. This is not healthy. This is not love. It's just a really well-stated post, which, of course, now she is heavily criticized by Hollywood because she's being labeled an anti-vaxxer. You can't come out and say I'm against the mandates without being called an anti-vaxxer these days.
Well, first of all, the good news is when it comes to COVID, no one's an anti-vaxxer because no one has been vaccinated. By any definition of the term vaccine that we had prior to the emergence of these products, they meet no threshold of that. All right, a vaccine is not a therapeutic. All right, it is an inoculation. Like when I went to do a mission trip in Haiti about 8 years ago, and the Obama State Department demanded, because it's a ravaged country, the poorest country in our hemisphere, that I would not be allowed back in the country unless my classic booster and vaccine cocktail that in our age group we got in elementary school. I think at the time that was 11 or 17. Now it's like 70 or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
72.
Okay. All right, 72. Unless I had those updated, I couldn't come back without like a quarantine period. So I went and got my vaccines and boosters from when I was a kid, tetanus and all that stuff. I got all that updated. And when I went away to Haiti and saw the kinds of suffering you don't ever want to ever see again in your life, and hugged I can't tell how many kids that were diseased and ravaged and everything else, no problem letting me back in the country. Why? There was no concern that I would bring what was communicable down there with me back up here. Why? Because I was vaccinated. Why? This is the only product in the history of capitalism that the failure is blamed on the people that don't buy it. All right, you did not get COVID because someone else didn't get vaccinated.
Right.
It's because your vaccine doesn't work. All right. If there's only two kinds of vaccines, there's no kinds of vaccine that lets you get infected but then helps you with an infection. It's either a perfect vaccine or it's a leaky one. It either stopped you from getting infected or it failed, or it's something called a therapeutic like the flu shot is. The problem is COVID therapeutic isn't a great talking point. That's not something easily sold. All right. But now the problem is that this is working against them. They sold it too well because millions of Americans lined up to get one of these 500 million injections, believing that meant they weren't going to get COVID. And now they're getting COVID.
They were told.
Yes, they were.
Absolute,
and they wouldn't have to wear masks anymore or anything else. Now we're talking about, if I had tweeted out back in February, looking at some of the efficacy trends, I think you're looking at getting another booster in this calendar year. I'd have been banned off of every major social media platform. Now we've got Mengele over there called Fauci claiming we need to triple jab toddlers. Okay? How the turntables here. This is so the good news is nobody's anti-vax when it comes to COVID because these are not vaccines.
Yeah. And something not to be missed. She's a member of SAG, Screen Actors Guild, which demands all their members to be. So she's vaccinated.
Yeah, she must be.
I'm making a movie, so I just went through with SAG.
Yeah,
I just went through all of this.
Yeah, and we just produced. I mean, so by their terms, she's vaccinated, so they can't call her anti-vaxxer. She's just using logic, and now we can debate whether it's actually a vaccine or not. No, okay. But just some perspective, this is not somebody who refused to take the vaccine. She's probably represented by CAA or William Morris Endeavor. There's more unions that she's answering to than she can count. She's taken the shot, okay? But still she's saying, hey, you just can't force this on people because it's unconstitutional.
Right.
But then again, our president tried to make it constitutional and the Supreme Court told him, sorry, Grandpa Joe, you can't, right? And so she's just using common sense. Speaking truth. So I think what
You're not allowed to do that these days, though.
That's what I want to say, though. It's not even about the vaccine. It is about forfeiting your right to think critically in this country and to operate on truth. You can call it COVID if you want to, but they want to alter truth. They want to alter reality. Right? They want to live in the metaverse. They want
control of truth.
Exactly.
I mean, if you look at the last line of her Instagram post, she says, I was pro-choice before, and I am pro-choice now. What's interesting is in the last year or so, we have seen this emergence on the American left. From Andrew Sullivan to Bill Maher to Naomi Wolf. Now you see this with Evangeline Lilly, and yes, she's hot. But this is where they're like, wait a minute, I thought we believed our own BS.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I didn't get into this. I thought that we were worried that Republicans would align with corporate America and impose authoritarian fascism on us. I'm not okay with the government now imposing fascism on me.
Right.
And I think that what you're seeing I like to say that liberals are people that want the government to let you do things that God says is dumb or immoral. Leftists are people that want the government to make you do those things. And what you're seeing now is there's a division between who's an old-style American liberal post-'60s boomer era.
Because it's different.
And then who's truly maybe thinks they're countercultural and anti-establishment, and who is the end of Animal Farm. And they looked from pig to man and back to pig and man to pig and back to pig again, and they couldn't tell the difference. That they really had no interest in being anti-establishment. They were interested in being the establishment.
All right, we've got more to come, but we got to thank our sponsor really quickly. I'm actually very excited that Steve is here for this because it's Built Bar.
I'm a total shill.
It's Built Bar, and we brought Steve's favorite flavor,
number one in my power ratings,
which is cookie dough chunk.
Yep.
His favorite flavor.
I just like
number
all of
two.
them. I
love
like
coconut
chocolate.
brownie chunk.
I just eat it all.
I like them all too, but
I don't have a favorite.
But cookie dough is its own food group, and it must be recognized.
I mean, I don't think you could find a table full of Built Bar junkies like the one right here. Like we are literally obsessed with them.
Yeah.
Eat them all the time. They're
I'll fight you for these in the break.
You don't have to, because I have like 3 boxes in my dressing room.
I'm willing to fight you for those in the break.
But if you're looking for something to, to snack on, maybe you have a sweet tooth, but you don't want to expand your waistline. Maybe your New Year's resolution was to lose some extra weight. Let Built Bar help you do that. They're a protein bar, so they are healthy. They've got the high protein. They've got the low calories. They're like 180 calories or less. But you feel like you're cheating on your diet. You feel like you're eating a candy bar. They're all covered in 100% chocolate. You got to try it, okay? If you have not yet already. I know so many of you sending me pictures of all of your boxes like, damn you, Sarah, look what you started. Now I'm an addict too. You're welcome. All right, you got to go to built.com. Use promo code news15. You can save 15% off of your order. That is news15 over at built.com. Happy to be joined now by the one and only Clay Travis, who, you know what, you were just literally next door doing your radio program.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it went well?
Well, I don't know if the show was great, but I mean, it was fantastic that I got to use the studio. Buck and I are on noon to 3 Eastern, and I'm down here for an event. My kids are down here for a couple days, so it worked well to be able to use the studio. I hadn't been to the Blaze studios before. It's fantastic, unbelievable building, so really great time. So
awesome.
I appreciate you guys hosting me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you pop in on the show. So we just talked about the trucker convoy happening in Canada, and then I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on one of the latest stories today. Pennsylvania court ruled today that the Commonwealth's 2019 voting law, which allowed anybody to apply for and receive a mail-in ballot to vote at least 50 days in advance, was unconstitutional because
nice timing,
I know you guys are shocked. Yeah, you guys are shocked
So
to hear this
interesting.
after the fact,
Yes, yeah.
because the legislature did not have permission to alter voting laws without amending the Constitution, and of course the Tom Wolf's administration will be filing. They're immediately appealing this decision to the state Supreme Court, and today's lower court ruling will have no immediate effect on mail-in voting pending a final decision on the appeal. I'm shocked. I tell you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just indicative, I think, of the larger narrative here that people are trying to combat. I mean, everything got changed in 2020, right? And you can get into the nuances of analyzing that from a perspective. I saw they're doing a really good deep dive in Wisconsin, just in terms of the overall number of votes that got in that would traditionally have not gotten in, right? And I think this is ultimately underlying everything with the voting rights push, if you want to call it voting rights, in Congress, because everything the Democrats did, if you use the existing numbers, they won the election by 40,000 votes, right? Flip 20,000 in Wisconsin, 10,000 in Georgia, 10,000 in Arizona, and they know that they're going to get destroyed in 2022. And they're already trying to figure out ways to avoid that. Right. And so I think that's the underlying foundational aspect of why this battle is taking place right now.
Yeah. Agreed. But this continues a disturbing trend where we have a major political party in America whose hierarchy of leaders have decided that let's just do stuff that we suspect or don't even care if it's constitutional or not, and then we'll just find out later if it is.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a dangerous place to be in a representative republic. I mean, it's kind of funny. I saw the Babylon Bee had a headline about this a couple of months ago. You know, Joe Biden orders the mass detainment of every unvaxxed American. Subhead: he'll wait for the courts to tell him if it was legal or not. All right, but this is not a good place to be in. If it's a bad place to be in if you want to maintain cohesion as a society. If you don't, if you want to unravel a society, well, then this is obviously a key step in that process.
Yeah, well, we've by hook or crook, we've allowed to brazen a faction of our culture that's been kept at check historically. They've been there. We want to come against the Constitution, radically change this country fundamentally, but they've been let out of the asylum. And have been given some territory and some keys. And my 2022 is going to be interesting. And we had this conversation. We're going to see they're going to keep throwing these kind of mechanisms or methods because they know that they're far behind. They can't get it back. It's going to be a red wave that's going to sweep them. They're imploding in the White House. They can't control leadership. Who's going to take over? Who's going to run the last 3 years? It can't be Uncle Joe. I mean, there's so much turmoil that we're going to see so many of these methods come out, but it's really because a precedent was set that I would even go as far as saying that watch out that the GOP doesn't exploit that precedent in the future. Because once you do these kind of things, when you come against the fundamental foundation of this country and you rock the foundation, there's good and evil on both sides. How do you stem the tide again, Steve? Do we go, well, let's get back to equilibrium where we go, the Constitution is the Constitution. The court's going to do what it's supposed to do. We're going to rule by law, not by case, right? Because now we've set precedent in this country where, I mean, it's up in the air.
And let me pose another question on top of that, too, because we're on YouTube, and I'd like to keep this video on YouTube. So I will be very careful with my words here. If you find it hard to understand how Joe Biden may have received 81 million votes, okay? If you just find that a little hard to stomach, to figure out how that could have possibly happened, how can you ever think that we would have another election that would be accurate, right? Because what did the Republicans do to stop it, to look into it, to do anything?
In fact, in Wisconsin, they aided and abetted it. The Republican state legislature
That's
helped put the drop boxes in the state.
Exactly.
So how does that not always happen every single time again? Because we have no one fighting to make sure that it doesn't.
I think also it's bigger than 2020 because look at all of the elections that we've had in basically the 21st century so far. 2000, Bush v. Gore. Arguments who won, right? 2004, Bush wins again, but there's a massive debate in the Democratic Party. Oh, what happened in Ohio? It doesn't add up.
Right.
2008, Obama won, and he won fairly comfortably. I think everybody would acknowledge. But 2012, more battles. 16, more battles. 20. I think what we need is just a clarifying ass kicking. Right? Where it's not in the margins based on a few 10,000 votes here and there. You need sort of that clarification.
To clear the system.
To clear the system. And really kind of, I always analogize it to a sporting, because I come from the world of sports in many ways. When you barely lose a game, you convince yourselves that the officials
One
cost
official
you the
call,
game.
absolutely.
You go back
look at the Cowboys.
I mean, come on. They did it to themselves. But
I'm a big Michigan fan. We were not analyzing any referees' calls after the orange.
That's right. That's right. Okay. And so an ass kicking can be clarifying. And I think 2022 in a midterm, an ass kicking is important. But I think in 2024, the Republicans have to destroy the Democratic nominee in the ballot box, where it's not close and you can't argue, hey, but for this couple of thousand votes.
But it also brings self-awareness. It forces self-awareness.
You have to
introspection. You have to adjust. You can't. How do you argue away 25 points?
That's right.
Here's the biggest problem, and I'll put this in a way because that doesn't hinder hopefully your YouTube page. Okay.
You know what? Just say it however you need to. We'll adjust.
The best case explanation you can make for what happened in 2020 is that in about a half dozen counties that Democrats uniquely control at the precinct level completely, both the enforcement mechanism in terms of how laws are upheld and applied from the sheriff to the police departments, everything. In just a half dozen counties, in just the states that they just so happen to need to win, that they completely control, the people that lived in those counties are so dumb that they don't know how the postage system works. That in Dane and Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, they just were not sure when they had to mail in their ballots in order for them to be in by election day.
Right.
And so, or the police got lost on the way to the ballot depot, and that's why we watched ballots being dropped off at 4 a.m. That is the most innocent, benign explanation, is that there is a segment of the Democrat voter base that is so dumb, it doesn't know how to stamp, how to send a postage, doesn't know how it works, how long it takes. And so therefore they had to be specially accommodated for why their votes showed up hours, if not days late. That is the benign, innocent explanation. That's not comforting to really anybody that didn't vote for them.
Well, I think also Democrats know that they did everything they could to win in 2020. And they barely dragged Joe Biden across the finish line. And I think when they went back and looked at the postmortem, they're saying, how often are we going to have a pandemic that allows fundamental alteration in the way that we're going to vote and allow to make changes like this?
Or a candidate that we can hide in the basement.
That's right. And we're still able to win, even with all those parameters in play. And so I think that's why they're so scared in 2022 and potentially in 2024, depending on what the campaign looks like, who's running, all of those different factors.
Democrats have another option here. Might I suggest moderate a little on your poopy policies?
Yeah.
Stop doing stuff that pisses people off.
Right.
That's another option. Like
But
you don't have to.
can they?
You
Can
don't have to just sit there and keep doing what nobody wants. It's like
it's not just doing it; it's doubling down.
Yeah, it's like the great prophet Sam Kinison once said to the people of Ethiopia during the '80s food crisis: "Move where the food is. You don't sit there and starve. You don't have to sit there and starve. Move where the food is. Don't do things that make people hate you. Stop doing that."
Right.
That's another possibility.
I think the question is just, does Joe Biden have the political capital or wherewithal to bounce back like Bill Clinton did in '94, like Obama did in 2010, to allow him to run a campaign that could get him reelected in 2024? I don't think that he does.
Yeah.
I don't think he has the capacity to do it, but I think that's going to be the reality that he wakes up for the day after the midterms.
Yeah. All right, we've got more to come, but first we want to thank our sponsor, My Go-To Doc. So people are asking us all the time. They're asking myself, I think they ask Steve all the time, where can I find a doctor online that I can trust who is a COVID expert and not just a prescription factory? Where can I find a pharmacy that's actually going to dispense off-label medication that's not going to charge me an arm and a leg? The answer to all of those questions is you can go to mygotodoc.com. Omicron is obviously milder than Delta, and hopefully it will mean that everything is going to be over soon. But you know what? You just want to make sure that you are always prepared, whether you are high risk or whether you are low risk. Make sure that you are prepared for COVID. You don't know how it's going to hit you. Dr. Saeed Haider has built something over at mygotodoc.com that I want to make sure you know about for 3 reasons. One is he is a COVID expert. This is all he does. He's treated over 40,000 patients with 0 deaths. Let me tell you, that's better than your local hospital. I can guarantee you of that. 2, you can register for free, ask your questions forever. 3, they connect you to pharmacies that ship you a full 28 doses of ivermectin for less than $150. All right, I'm telling you guys, you want to go there now. Get it so that you have it when you need it. You can go to mygotodoc.com. That is mygotodoc.com. Joe Biden had a conversation with Ukrainian President Zelensky to discuss the potential military conflict between Ukraine and Russia. But according to a report citing anonymous sources, look, you know what? I just have to say it's not great to have anonymous sources, but it's always nice to see that at least it's spread throughout, right? We had all of these anonymous sources with Trump, and we're like, who the hell keeps leaking this? So I'm not saying it's good to have anonymous sources, but I'm just saying sometimes you're like, all right, good, it happens to you too. But the call did not go well, according to these anonymous sources. And CNN first reported the story yesterday evening. Let me play a little bit of Jake Tapper talking about that.
We have breaking news for you in our world lead. A senior Ukrainian official tells CNN that today's phone call between President Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, quote, did not go well. Our source tells CNN that the two disagreed about the immediacy of the threat of a Russian attack on Ukraine. The White House and Pentagon have been emphatic that they believe an attack could be imminent. We should note the White House just released its own readout of that call, and there was no mention of President Biden's warnings or the two presidents' disagreements. The White House did say Biden underscored America's commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. CNN's Matthew Chance.
Yeah, that's probably good. Thank you. So I don't want to subject the audience to another minute of CNN. All right, I wouldn't do that to them. But the call reportedly lasted an hour and 20 minutes. Exactly. I know they're already pissed that I made them watch any part of Jake Tapper. But look, the White House is saying all of that is completely false. It went fine. They said that President Biden said there is a distinct possibility that the Russians could invade Ukraine in February. He has previously said this publicly, and we have been warning about this for months. Reports of anything more or different than that are completely false. And I did see, I believe it was on Jake Tapper's Twitter account, that they had posted this and then had removed it. They had deleted it. So they're trying to, I guess, distance themselves from this story now that, of course, the White House has corrected them, which is nice because I feel like the previous administration did not get that benefit of the doubt anytime there would be some sort of anonymous information being leaked that administration said was not true.
I am trying to make myself care about this story. I mean, I am.
I am too, Steve. I am too.
And I got to say, as a Gen X, I'm a Reagan baby, child of the 80s. I mean, I grew up because we're America.
Yeah.
How you like me now? How you like them apples? Because we're America and you're not. And in another era, I'd have been like, no way we're letting that former KGB thug try to turn himself into the world's next superpower. We're going to go over there and spank his ass and pimp slap him around because that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
I don't live in that era, sadly.
Right.
And I'm in a position where I'm saying and thinking things because of the reality of the world we're in that another Steve Deace would have never thought when I got into this business I would say and think. And here's one of them. I am far more threatened by my own government than I am Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin did not attempt to turn me into an experimental lab rat and my family and all my children over the last year. Vladimir Putin didn't lock down my churches, didn't lock down my businesses, didn't lock down my way of life, didn't give me record hyperinflation. I mean, the list could go on and on and on. I really want to rally around the flag so bad. All right, I want to get into root against the Chi-Coms in the Olympics next week so bad, but I can no longer ignore the loaded weapon, the proverbial loaded weapon my own government has pointed at me, and my jingoism just can't get there anymore, guys. It's just dead. It's a dead carcass now.
It's on a logic ladder when you do threat assessment for military and sport. You have to assess the immediate threat, threat to your family, your community. It's here. It's here. Sure.
And I'm sad.
And
I'm
of
broken
course,
to actually
I'm an
admit
immigrant.
that.
Can you imagine? I come from some of the worst rule in history, right? Heck, our nation was sanctioned. We couldn't even import a can of beans. Here we are today, but we have to just realize that the greatest threat is right here. It's here. And so great. Okay, Putin. But I agree with you. And so unless that penny drops, because even in the church community, we so often want to send missionaries to Africa. I go, you better start doing missions at home.
Yeah.
You better start going 4 blocks over.
Yeah.
Defend the Constitution in your
Send some
child's
missionaries to
classroom.
California.
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, so it is here. And so I'm also an Xer, and I am from Africa, so we like to go take a guy behind the shed and just straighten him out, right? I mean, my first episode on this show was not so good because I said we used to do some other things, right? But we are here now where the immediate threat assessment is local. Yeah. It's our government, local government, federal government, and so we need to focus here. So this is a ball Tom Brady style, throw to the EU and say, go help your future ally.
Time to play some you got him defense.
Go help your future ally. You go clean this up, thank you very much, AKA Trump style, pay your dues.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a wag the dog element to this.
Yeah.
And if you combine it with the Supreme Court timing, where suddenly you have all the discussion about a Supreme Court justice, you have all the discussion about Ukrainian border sovereignty, even though we're not talking about our own border sovereignty, and it takes away from talking about inflation. All of the New York City cops that were lined up. I mean, we just set an all-time record going back to 2001, 20-year high for cops that were murdered. We've got unbelievable rates of violent crime, inflation, COVID still setting new highs in terms of hospitalizations in the last week to 10 days. And all of a sudden, what are people talking about? Ukraine, and they're talking about the Supreme Court opening. And both of those things distract from what is the fundamental failures of the Biden administration. I don't think it's coincidental that both of those are arising right now as we pivot from January into February.
It would be nice, though, if you're Joe Biden, if this is a wag the dog situation, if the distraction that you were using was something that you would look good with,
no doubt.
right?
Right.
It's just,
but it's not.
Yeah, but I mean, how?
No, you're making a good point. When you look at after what happened with Afghanistan, that's when they went into the jab mandates.
Right.
So unpopular as jab mandates are to the nation as a whole, within their own base, they're actually very popular.
That's a good point.
So they were losing their own base over leaving people behind in Afghanistan. This was a way to shore up their base and say, see, turn on the people that are unjabbed, that are keeping the pandemic going. Now that they've lost on that case for the most part, they need to pivot to another issue, is what you're talking about. The problem is, where would they go? Most of their base doesn't want their kids dying in Ukraine either.
Right.
So they're kind of out of issues to go to unless they play the race card, like with the Supreme Court justice. Okay,
which they will always.
Which they will always. So they're trying to do that, but they're kind of out of pivot points to detour where they can at least get into the 40s from an approval perspective because they've shored up parts of their base that they've already seen erode. They don't have many options for that right now.
COVID's going to recede, as we know, probably, right, as we move into February, March, and April. And I think as we get closer to the midterms, I think Biden's just going to come out and declare victory. I really do.
Well,
Just
this is what we were talking about this
we
earlier.
discussed this
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah, like I think that's where we're headed.
Omicron gave them the perfect off-ramp.
They have
That's
one.
right.
Yeah.
With
You
no
have to-
political damage. There's
you
no,
have to
you know.
take it, because otherwise, what are you going to be able to point towards in the midterm and say we
Nothing.
accomplished something?
Yeah.
Right?
Nothing.
That's
Nothing.
that's the off ramp.
The problem they have, and so this is the dilemma we were discussing, Clay, before. It's clear, if you look at the way, hey, there's no federal solution. We're going to change the testing standards, the quarantine standards. It's clear they're setting up a narrative, okay, where they can now say with Omicron, the virus is the first attenuating strain. We won, and now it's our off-ramp, and therefore they don't have to do any retro accountability for all the mistakes up to
Yes.
now, and just memory hole this. The problem that they're going to have, though, is that not all Democrats are Branch Covidians, but all Branch Covidians are Democrats. There is a sizable chunk
right
of their
about that.
base that doesn't want to let this go. And are they going to let them let it go? And that's
hope.
what's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
It's a true. I mean, it is such a fascinating question.
Yeah.
I agree.
The cult,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think they've been a little too radicalized, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back.
It's kind of like when you feed your kids sugar, you did it. Now you're going to deal with the damage.
Yeah. What time do I? Cats.
We've covered on this program what happened in Loudoun County, Virginia, with the cover-up, with the sexual assault, and all that whole story. And we see what happened in Virginia. I think in large part due to everything that was happening in Loudoun County. But the teenager who sexually assaulted a girl in a high school bathroom in Loudoun County won't have to register as a sex offender. This is after the judge reconsidered the sentence. This is, of course, an unnamed 15-year-old. Had been sentenced earlier in January to supervised probation in a residential treatment facility until he turned 18, and was also sentenced to register as a sex offender. But the judge says that she made a mistake and lessened the sentence. This was, of course, 2 acts of sodomy. And I have a table full of 3 men who are obviously very strong men who were once young boys. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this, not having to register as a sex offender.
If I can go first, Steve, you know what we do. We fight sex trafficking. Let me tell you this. 100% of the predators and pedophiles we arrest, 100% are porn addicts. 100%. 100% of them will tell you that in their late teen years, they either contemplated or enacted upon abuse of a peer, right? So the notion that, for me, and I'm speaking for me, that magically when he turns 17 by default, he's just going to change behavior unless there's serious work done in that young boy's life right now, because he's so far over the cliff already to go and act upon his need for this drug. He should register. Now there should be a program for him to migrate out of it. But there's no way that you can let that kid walk into a college campus at 19, unregistered as a sex offender, and just think magically when he turns 18 or 19, you flip a switch on this stuff, because you don't, because we're dealing with it for decades after the fact.
Yeah, especially I think with I don't know this particular residential treatment facility that he's going to, but historically, our mental health facilities have not been so great. I don't really think that they are helping people change their lives, at least in my experience.
It's hard work.
What I've seen.
It's really difficult.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say quickly, if I was his dad, you'd have to call Child Protective Services. Or if I was her dad, you'd have to raise bail money.
Yeah.
And that's my answer.
Yeah.
When it's 2 different instances, this is me when I practice law, there's oftentimes every one of these cases a he said, she said component to it, right? And so you don't know 100% what happened in any one instance. But when you're that young and you've had 2 instances that close together, it's symptomatic, because these are only 2 we know about, right?
Right.
Usually
Good point.
You have oftentimes created other situations like that. And I always say, and look, I've got 3 boys, but they're young. But if you put yourself in a situation where you were falsely accused of sexual assault, if you were innocent, would you ever put yourself in a situation where you could be accused of sexual assault again?
Or let's say, what did his
that's a great
mom say the
point.
first time it was a misunderstanding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so because the porn culture does work both ways. I'm a child. I've got daughters and sons. The porn culture works the other way too.
Absolutely.
All right. The girls are not nearly as innocent as they were when we were growing up.
they're
Or at least we
watching
thought
porn
we were. So
disproportionate
let's just say
rate.
the first one was a misunderstanding. You're so right, Clay. As a guy, you just had a near-death experience.
You're
Yes.
never
Your
getting
life
close
was just
again.
over.
Yes.
You're like, I'm not going freaking anywhere near that again. The fact that the dog returned to its own vomit and it happened again, that is a key point. Yes.
Twice we know of.
Yes. It's likely that there are other situations that could have been similar to those. I used in the world of sports, Jameis Winston, remember, accused credibly of sexual assault at Florida State.
Yeah.
Then he gets accused of groping a woman in an Uber when he's an NFL quarterback. If you were 100% innocent with Jameis Winston and you had that much at stake, how would you ever put yourself
You're
in
never
that position
alone
again?
with a
Look at
woman.
Ben Roethlisberger, who just
Yeah.
retired this week. So Roethlisberger had a near-death experience on vacation in the offseason. I think it was in
Yeah,
Florida.
that's right.
Exactly.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, dude's married, family man. I'm doing evangelism. I want to expand the kingdom of
You
God.
go the other direction.
That's a guy that was like, okay, man, my life nearly flashed before
I'm
my
never
eyes.
putting myself in that
I got
situation
religion
again.
after something like that. Yeah.
And also we got to, sorry, Sarah, we have
go
to, what are we teaching the young man? Because if you just, we are in a culture today where consequences out the window.
Yes.
You're a sex offender in New York, you get fingerprinted, there's no bail. You just walk the same day. And you get a court date 3 weeks from now. So here's a 15-year-old, it's an opportunity in his life to course correct.
Yeah.
And there should be real heavy
Yes.
consequence.
Yes.
You want to go buy a car at 18? You should have to say, this is not that easy for me right
Yeah.
now. Because if you just coast on life as it normally was,
Correct.
What are you teaching? How is he not going to then do this again at 28, 29?
Exactly.
30?
Yeah.
Well, it's the Michael Rappaport video. What are we going on here? And I'm like, what you voted for, bruh? That's what's going on. I mean, don't plant the soil if you don't want to take on the harvest, brother. I mean, this is what y'all voted for.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about. You always end up reaping what
AKA
you
Antonio
sow.
Brown. You want to bring him in the locker room? All
Yes.
right, drink the poison,
Yeah,
baby.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
He went on.
You guys were talking about wag the dog situation earlier. I think we may need to change that to wag the cat, because this is what we're seeing on mainstream media headlines. The Bidens celebrate their new cat. So the Bidens have welcomed a new four-legged friend into the White House, a 2-year-old gray and white striped cat named Willow, which is just, look, if you're no stranger to the program, you know that before we actually came out and did this broadcast, I actually had to have my producer show me a picture of the cat so that I could see it ahead of time and ooh and ah over it so that I wouldn't do it on air, because that would have been embarrassing for me. And I'm trying very hard not to do it right now because the cat does look cute and similar to my cat. However, I mean, we're talking at the table, we're talking about inflation going on, we're talking about the vaccine mandates, we're talking about all of these horrible things happening in the country. And here we see the Bidens are celebrating their new cat. Are you insulted yet, America? Are you insulted yet? I am.
Ice cream and cats, man.
Shiny object.
Biden's latest ice cream flavor choice, and now the cat. This is emblematic, I think, of a desperate attempt to make Joe Biden seem accessible. Right?
Yeah.
And he's old enough that his kids are clearly not going to help him out in that respect.
Yeah.
So we got to go with the animals.
Yeah, I mean, like, how...
What a stupid son of a bitch. No pun intended.
How evil is Jill Biden at this point for continuing to trot her husband out? Like, I just keep thinking, God, if you really love your husband, do you let him go out
Do you
like
know
this?
that's my wife's number one complaint about all of this? Is like, how do
I don't get it.
do you let this
It
happen?
hurts my
You got to
heart.
be some kind of evil.
You have to be, right?
Or narcissistic or power grab to want to be the first, lady or be there. But it's elderly abuse. It is irresponsible. I mean, but hey, it's shiny object. You said it. Look over here. We got real problems, but look at Ukraine. Look at my cat. And it's an age-old ploy of going to animals. That's desperation. When I saw that, I go,
Have
okay,
you considered a
they're really
kickboxing class or a margarita?
Yeah. You need a place to get your tensions out
Yes.
there, Jaco.
Yes.
All right, that will be it for us. But I want to thank you guys so much for being here. It's always fun. Clay, I know this is your first time on the program.
It's
We
lots
used
of
to
fun.
always have 3 guests, and then we had to change it to COVID. And so it's always fun when we can have a full table.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Make sure to follow all of these gentlemen on social social media and make sure to follow their shows as well. That will be it from us here in Dallas, and we will see you guys on Monday.